Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Jim Heller, who is a solicitor, that is like a lawyer. Well, he's a criminal defense lawyer up in Canada. We have a conversation about his rowdy time being a cult member in a 70s derivative of an Indian guru that comes over to America and begins to prophesy some very deep knowledges. And he got swept up in that for, it seems like almost a decade, and then he went on with his life. So we talk about that adventure, and then we talk about his other scholastic pursuits, as well as him just dealing with cult-like thinking since then, which is kind of relevant to what he sees happening now in popular discourse or in the culture at large. I didn't expect anything from any interview. I never expect anything from any interview, but I was pleasantly surprised by his verve and vivacity. It was a fun conversation, so here we go. Let's have fun. This is Benjamin Boyce, and here is Jim Heller.
I'm from back east. I'm from Toronto, mainly. And when I was 18 or so, I left school. I was at York University, and I left school. I wasn't interested in that any longer, and I came out west, and I joined this Maharaj Ji cult.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, so do you know who that is?
Could you give an outline of that? I'm picturing a guy with a lot of facial hair.
No, actually not. He was young. He was too young for that. He had a fledgling mustache. He was like 15 years old when I first got involved. He was a 15-year-old Lord of the Universe.
Wow.
And it's incredible how time just swallows up everything. He was a big phenomenon at that point. He was in Time magazine. Several celebrities kind of fell at his feet. Most notoriously, Rennie Davis. So Rennie Davis was one of the Chicago 7, and he was on his way. Remember, you know Chicago 7? You know Rennie Davis?
No, I don't. I need to watch that Netflix film, but
It sucks. It's Aaron Sorkin. Oh. You know, if you can tolerate Aaron Sorkin, he's exactly exactly. But Rennie Davis is one of the guys, and he was on his way to, I think, the Hanoi American peace talks that went on forever in Paris. And when he was on the plane, he sat next to a follower of Maharaj Ji, and the follower of Maharaj Ji just completely seduced him with the allure of what Maharaj Ji promised, and he became a premi, which means lover in Hindi, which was what we called ourselves, everybody that was in this cult. So suddenly this big leader, he was the leader of the SDS, Students for Democratic Society, bolted and became a follower of this teenage, fat little Lord of the Universe, who we thought was God. We totally believed that he was God in human form and that he had proven that to us. This is how subtle and tricky it got. The whole thing that his pitch was that you don't have to believe anything. Everything's just based on evidence. I can show you these meditation techniques that will just prove themselves to you. And you'll see that they're totally aligned with all of the scriptures of the world and all completely falls into place. And here I am. I'm the living perfect master. I'm here to bring peace to the world. So Davis becomes a follower of his. And of course, he goes back to Berkeley and tries at one point to bravely face the Berkeley fomenting, it was like 1973 perhaps, 72 or 3. And he got pelted, with tomatoes and stuff, all of that. So I was a follower of this kid, and he did not have much facial hair. He had like a very thin little mustache.
Did he have handlers, or was he just naturally charismatic?
His father was naturally charismatic. So his father was the Sat Guru, the true guru before him in India. Dad had 4 sons. Maharaj Ji was the youngest. When Dad died, and this could all be bullshit. Supposedly he fell on a bar of soap in the shower and died. It might not be true. Who knows, right? But anyways, he left a letter saying that, my love to everybody, but I salute my youngest son as being kind of the recipient of the light that passes and never extinguishes. So Maharaj Ji was, I think, 12 or 13 at that point. No, he was even younger. God, it's fading. I'm starting to screw up my Maharaj Ji.
So when did he export his godly powers to the west. What year?
So some hippies, some English hippies, mainly English, a few American, found him in India like around 70.
Okay.
And 71, 72, he makes his first trip to London. And I'd say 72. And big phenomenon, nobody knew. Like, could this be true? It's the early 70s. Everybody was suspending their disbelief. This is when Carlos Castaneda got a PhD at Berkeley with absolutely no field notes, total bullshit about Don Juan and all of that. The younger bucks on the faculty were able to persuade the older guys, hey, you guys are following an older model. You should be more receptive and more open. So that's what happened. So we're like that with Maharaj Ji. Like, could this be true? Actually, they were more evidence-based than we were. But we thought we were.
How were the cells organized, or the churches, or the plantations, or whatever you call
the
them?
The ashrams. They were the center all across. And we got really big. It was like a very kind of burgeoning organization. We had telex machines, if you can believe that. That's how.
Is that like a fax machine with pneumatic tubes or something?
Oh my God! It was like a form of like immediate communication before the internet. It was like the immediate precursor to the internet.
So it was like text messaging then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, on paper. So we had that. Like, it was very impressive in the moment.
Okay.
What was I talking about? So how?
Well, the ashrams, how they were.
Well, the whole thing. So okay. We were very proud of the fact that we were spreading all over the place, and every major city had a center, and then there'd be people that didn't live in the center. They were kind of maybe sometimes a little bit less committed. They didn't, for whatever reason, want to be celibate monks. Go figure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one of the selling points,
Yeah.
I guess features of this.
What would you need sex for? If you're able to merge with divine, kind of energy and stuff, sex is just kind of a low energy.
Yeah. And this is co-ed, then?
Yes.
Okay.
The ashrams were co-ed. That's right. We were able to do that until things started to kind of dim, and then the baser kind of human tendencies started to rise. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So after some years, that's what happened to me, and I had this girlfriend, and I left the ashram. We moved down to California. I had some family there at the time. My father was there. My sister was there. And after a while, I went back to school, and went to Cal State Northridge, and it was great. I started just using my mind again. So the thing with the cult was that we believed that our mind, our thoughts, were just evil transgressors. It was like a virus. That's how kind of hardcore this was. We were so much more hardcore than all these other cults, even though we weren't violent necessarily. We really thought that the mind was evil, and we were trying to transcend it, totally 100% transcend it. Now, when I escaped after some years, I'm enjoying my mind. I started smoking dope again. I started thinking, reading, all of that. I'm at Cal State Northridge, just loving being in school. And I went on to law school, and I went to USC, and graduated 87.
Why did you choose law? What?
It was kind of like not a default. I took the LSAT. I did well on it. Didn't know what I was going to do next. Thought of maybe going kind of the academic route. I had some professors that wanted me to, history, economics, but I didn't. So I got a scholarship to SC. And it was flattering, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. Oh, yeah, and as someone who'd been like this hippie in a cult where I had done nothing but menial jobs during that time, the idea of being able to kind of maybe kind of move into a profession and wash all of that away was very kind of enticing. So what happened?
Was there a process of deprogramming or that you had to confront consciously, or did things just kind of naturally kind of break apart and disintegrate your belief system?
Right. So I started to become disillusioned as time went on, and Maharaj Ji's promise obviously couldn't be fulfilled because he was not the Lord of the universe. And
what was his what was he going to give you guys at the end of time, being like 1981 on September 3rd or something like that?
Right. So it wasn't quite that specific, but but it was a little bit like that. When we went to the Houston Astrodome in 1973, we didn't take winter coats. Okay, we went in winter and we thought something just amazing was going to happen, but it didn't.
Did he tell you have faith?
Yeah, he did, and his brothers did, and years later they tried to completely, rationalize that all away and say they weren't really saying that, but it's bullshit. They were. And we believed it. And so then we had to kind of justify how it didn't happen. So we had that ongoing Jehovah's Witness syndrome that they must still, be suffering from, with many, many, many kind of false end games. So that was part of it. But I still didn't leave that. At 73, that's still early on. I'm still in the cult for years to come. But the experiences didn't really take me anywhere further, because they weren't like this kind of pathway to merging with divine consciousness. That didn't really happen. And Maharaj Ji's kind of sway in the world wasn't kind of growing as we hoped and expected that it would, and all of that kind of these things. Oh, and I was starting to miss the world. As time goes by, I've got peers that are kind of advancing in life. They're forming families. They're at least having sex. They're enjoying the world. They're developing kind of careers. I'm doing these bullshit menial jobs because that's not where we were at. We didn't want to be attached to the world, to our egos, all of that.
So you guys would just grow grains and weave shirts and sell martini umbrellas or something? No, we'd work in warehouses. We'd get like shitty jobs in the city. Oh, okay. So you'd still be connected to the world, but everybody was capped at a certain very low-end blue-collar job. No management. You can't go up the...
Why would you want to do that? Like, what kind of an ego kind of trip is that? Why would you want to do that?
Okay, yeah.
The plum jobs were getting a position in the organization itself. Then you could just go, sky was the limit.
Yeah, because you're working in the blessings of the tide, yeah.
Exactly. Huh. Yeah. Do you kind of wish that this had come your way? Would you like that?
Me? No. I found my own cult. I'm totally fine with the one that I found.
No, but everybody says that. Are you sure that you don't want to see that? Man, it's been years since I've tried to kind of make that pitch, but I miss it.
Oh, so you would proselytize. You would talk to people. And what was the content of the practice then? There was some...
meditation.
So like mantra-based meditation, or focusing on
four techniques. I'll show them to you. We swore like it was like the most serious, sober oath ever, that we would never ever reveal these techniques. But of course, I've crossed that river a long time ago.
Are they going to come after us? Are they going to come after me?
They might. So one of them is to see divine light. We just simply pressed our eyes and kind of put our finger up here in the forehead. And if you do that, you will see. So it's so funny I'm doing this. In other words, to listen to the sound of the breath. And there was a weird one. There were four. There was a weird one where we'd actually train our tongue to go up behind the palate of the roof of the mouth. And supposedly that was our connection to get divine nectar. These are classic Indian yoga things.
Yeah.
But the whole idea was that even if you got them without Maharaj Ji's grace, they'd be nothing. They wouldn't be effective. It was all Maharaj Ji. It was all about him.
Oh, okay. What was his trajectory then? Did he maintain purity even though he wasn't able to give God to everyone? Was he exempt from human scandal?
Until he was on a flight, just like Rennie Davis, but this is a different one, where he's on a flight and one of the stewardesses, which is a word that you might not know because you're so young, that was like a female flight attendant.
Snap.
Anyways, so one of the stewardesses happened to be a premie. She was a follower of his in California. Totally hot. He's like still 15, I think, at the time. She's like maybe 21, 22. Just gorgeous woman. And he just totally fell in love with her. And of course, she was his for the asking. I mean, he's the cult leader. He's God. So he hooked up with her. And this caused this rift in the family. So I told you that there were 3 other brothers and his mother. And they all supposedly worshipped him, and they all played the game as if he was the perfect master. But when he hooked up with Marilyn, that was a big deal. And so the family was split asunder. They had a big court case in India. They'd fought over the assets of Divine Light Mission. Judge gave them all shit, said, this is like a very bad reflection on Indian spirituality. And they went their separate ways. Maharaj Ji kept one brother with him, and the other two brothers and mom went off and did their other thing. So one of the other brothers became a big political leader in India. Another one the guy was a total idiot. He became a guru in his own right in India. Then there's Maharaj Ji back here in the West, and he's got the best looking of the four brothers. I have to say, Maharaj Ji was a very cool guy. And he married also a very hot girl. She was like the heiress to some big German arms thing or something like that. So one day, now I'm in law school, and I've drifted apart. You asked me how I got away. Well, I'm enjoying relishing in my doubts now and thinking about things and seeing how he's changed things and not really kind of been clear and accountable for them. For example, you used to only be able to get initiated by Maharaj Ji's Mahatmas. I can't believe that all we're doing is talking about this, but that's good. It's interesting.
Fine. Well, yeah. No, I'm loving it.
So Maharaj Ji would anoint various followers to become a Mahatma, which means great soul, which means like they're one of his vessels, and only they were authorized dealers for the meditation. So they were the ones that could show you the techniques. And so that obviously they were immediately placed on incredibly high pedestals. I remember when he first made his first 4 Western followers Mahatmas, 3 guys and a girl. And it was like, wow, they went from being regular human beings to saints. Okay, that's how we looked at them. Now, years later, it's like he's allowed them to drift out because the whole organization's tried to tone down. And he's trying to say that they were never really that divine, because at that time he said if they fell, they're going to really high height, but if they fell from there, it's like a glass and you lift it up really high, it's going to shatter when it drops. It's not low to the ground. But then suddenly that all fell apart. And I'm now a lawyer in law school, and I'm a lawyer. I'm thinking, hey, wait a second. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah.
So one day, a friend of mine who is still into Maharaj Ji comes and visits me in LA from Canada. And he says, Jim, Raja Ji, who was that one good-looking brother that stayed with Maharaj Ji, Raja Ji's having a meeting out near the airport. So, big cult meeting, hundreds of people. Why don't you come? Just for the hell of it. And I said, okay, I will, just for the hell of it. So I went and I sat in the back of the hall, and I'm listening to this guy. And of course, it's just a fundraiser, right? All they're trying to do is get money for, I think Maharaj Ji was buying a new 747 or something, and they needed to get money for it. So, so there's this guy that I'm in the very back, and there's this guy that's saying to Raja Ji way up front, look, I totally want to give you money, and I'm totally supportive. And he's very kind of humble and in fact, self-effacing, and what you'd expect a good cult member to be like. But he says, but I'm confused. I'm confused about some of these changes, the same ones that I was just talking about. They're just glaring kind of inconsistencies in the dogma over time. So Raja Ji starts giving this bullshit pitch, and he's, kind of just nothing, kind of just trying to basically blow the guy off so he can continue to get his money and just move on. And for the first time, I'm in the very back row. I stood up and I started heckling him. Like I was one of the guys that used to kick the hecklers out, right? Oh. And now I'm a heckler, right? And I said, hold on, that's not fair. We were told your brother was divine, and this guy's got some honest, sincere questions. So Raja Ji starts talking to me now, and he's saying, well, it's kind of like the movie The Last Emperor. We were raised to, and it's like weird stuff he's saying, because it kind of makes it sound like it wasn't genuine. There was just
they
bullshit.
Were indoctrinated themselves.
Yes, that's right.
What?
That's right. Weird. And it's a funny thing for him to kind of concede that way. Anyways, instead of getting kicked out, I just somehow kind of, we start like talking, and people's heads are swiveling back and forth. And I invite him to kind of go out for a drink later to talk about things. And that makes everybody laugh, which was funny because nobody ever laughed at these hecklers before. We were the kind of people that, as I say, got summarily kicked out and whatever. So anyways, that doesn't happen. The meeting's over. I go up to the front and I kind of introduce myself. And I mention that I'm a lawyer now. And suddenly at that juncture, that's really impressive. So I'm like this guy, skeptical, still cult member. No, not really, but whatever. And he comes to see me in my office the next day. He's living out in Malibu, and he's got a haircut in Beverly Hills, and he's going to drop by and meet me after. He's going to drop by and meet me after work, and we're going to go down to the Red Robin for a drink. So we do. We go for a drink. And when we're there, all he's doing is just complaining about how Maharaj Ji's not giving him enough money. And I'm saying to him, well, that doesn't interest me. What interests me is like reality. Like, what the hell, right? And after a while, he says to me, here's what he said to me. I said, who do you think Maharaj Ji is? And who does Maharaj Ji say he is? And you know what? He dropped his guard. This is really incredible. Huh. People might not believe this. If any current, because there are some kind of lifers that are still, into the cult, and that's a whole other thing. But if they saw this, they still might doubt this happened, or maybe not. But Maharaj Ji, this guy, he looked at me and he dropped his guard and he said, I've tried to ask him that too. Like, who does he think he is? And he won't answer. And at that point, I felt totally liberated. I said, that is so cool. That was my final moment to be able to close the door. And that was it. I walked him out to his very expensive old man Mercedes, and he took off.
Wow. Did you feel regret for lost time, or did you kind of just fold that into your experience and your journey as a human?
Yeah, I mean, that's 8 years of my life, that obviously, there were some fun times there. Like I played guitar and I wrote a lot of cult songs. But I mean, let's face it, that's all, that was not a trajectory that I would have chosen for myself or anybody else, knowing now how kind of false it is. Okay, so anyways, I come back to Canada and, I've been out of the country for about 8 or 9 years, and now I'm a lawyer, and different things happen. I end up coming back to Canada. 1990, I come back here. And I do whatever it takes to get retooled so that I can practice law here in Canada, too. So I became a lawyer here. And I'm a criminal lawyer, and I live in Victoria. And 1996, 97 is when people started getting online. And so I did, too, right? And modems and all of that, dial-up modems. And I couldn't believe it was magical. Do you remember when you first got online? It's just incredible.
Yeah. I think it was probably right around like 1998 or something like that.
Okay, so this is
maybe 96 actually.
96.
Yeah, it's right around then. I spent like 2 hours online, and I walked out of the computer lab, and the whole world seemed completely different. It was very mind melting.
You could get free porn. Like online, like it's fucking incredible. I couldn't believe it. What is going on here? I just couldn't believe it. But then I was like, well, what do I want to do with this? And I thought, well, what's interesting? And I thought, what about that cult? Because it'd been some years now. Like I'd left Maharaj Ji, far behind. Mm-hmm. But I looked for people, and this is when Usenet was happening, like the different kind of discussion boards. Mm-hmm. And I found some people on alt support ex-cult. And it was just a general discussion, but I was asking about Maharaj Ji. And one thing led to another, and some of us ex-followers kind of met, and we came together, and we started the Internet ex-followers scene. And to this day, you can go to ex-premi.org. Okay. And that's kind of like the information clearinghouse. Okay. And we had discussion boards. And so now we're kind of fighting the cult. Maharaj Ji's trying to reinvent himself at that point. He's trying to become an ambassador for peace and totally disassociating himself from his earlier claims. And the cult is doing all that it can to try to gaslight the world, anybody that's watching, anybody interested. And so we're fighting that, and we're kind of putting up the truth. Anybody that's going to Google Maharaj Ji is going to find this. We're involved in big Wikipedia wars, and this is the kind of nascent days of Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? Oh, yeah, so the cults, I'm getting Law Society complaints. They're doing horrible things.
Oh, they're coming after you then. Oh, retaliatory. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But the Law Society, so this is kind of an interesting juxtaposition. At that point, the Law Society, this is before things have gotten woke. This is like, still the 90s. And And the Law Society completely gets it. They say, you're doing, good yeoman's work of fighting this kind of cult, and tells the cult to fuck off, and leave me alone. And that was great. So that's what my life was like. I was living here in Victoria, criminal lawyer, different things, played in a band, stuff like that, but mainly fighting the cult, being a criminal lawyer. And then 9/11 happened. Okay, so 9/11 happened, and I immediately started to realize that, first of all, this caused a big schism in our ex-cult group, because there were those of us who were kind of supportive of George Bush and rallying around the flag and trying to kind of, defend America and all of that. Even though I'm in Canada, it was a simple identification. Yeah. And those of us that were already more ingrained with the left and weren't planning to kind of leave it anytime soon. Yeah. So this caused a big problem. We're supposed to only be talking about Maharaj Ji, but all we're doing is talking about 9/11, right? Yeah. And I started to realize soon after that that's a bigger thing for me to kind of think about. And so the Maharaj Ji thing is we've done what we're going to do. He's already super duper rich. You go to xpremi.org and you see his place in Malibu, it'll blow your mind. But he's already got that money. Nothing ever is going to happen. We've stemmed his progress to some extent. But what about this thing? What the hell was that? I knew nothing about Islam, nothing. But I started reading about it. And one of the things that I first noticed was that the media was very shy and sheepish about kind of covering this ideologically correctly. And all I'm thinking about is ideology. What's driving these guys? What are they thinking? Who are they? And so I start finding the fledgling sites now that arise in the wake of 9/11 that are kind of critical of the jihadi ideology that led to it, Islamic supremacism, all of that. Islam. I don't say Islamism. I've never understood that neologism. I don't accept it. Was Muhammad an Islamist? And give me a fucking break, right? He was a Muslim. Anyways, so it took a little while. I dropped out of caring about Maharaj Ji and didn't really kind of communicate with those people anymore. No, that's not really quite accurate. But my interest really, really shifted, and I became very, very, very interested in Islam. And Benjamin, if we'd been having this discussion maybe 3 years ago, that's all I would have to talk about. What does Jim Heller have to say about anything? Well, talk about Islam. That's what I really care about, and Islam's kind of encroachment on Western values and all of that. And here's the thing now. And I used to read Jihad Watch, Religion of Peace, all of these sites, Gates of Vienna, Gatestone, all of that, all the time. And I was very hot on that. And here's the thing. I don't feel that hasn't lapsed in the slightest, but Wokism has completely come to the front burner.
The rainbow jihad.
Yeah. Fuck. And it's crazy and it's so insidious. And yeah.
When did that first hit your radar?
Right. Well, it's kind of like it was a slow parade. When did it? It's a good question. I know that you went to Evergreen, and I know that was a galvanizing moment for you. I guess watching what happened to Brett, or maybe your own experience there. Is that it? A little bit of both?
I was there, so Brett was kind of the outsider's perspective, but I have the insider perspective. So
right.
Watching what happened to an institution of education turn into whatever, like some sort of training camp for very inept radicals.
Yeah.
Do
you have friends still from there?
Well, I mean, I have to have friends before I could specify that I have friends that went there. But I actually have a few.
Do you have friends?
I have a couple friends. Virtual friends, many, but in life friends. Yeah, but I have a few people that I'm connected to that went there, and one that's even still going there. Yeah.
So that was a real milestone moment. But I think with that's the thing. You caught me up there unintentionally, because There was the idea, when to identify as wokeism. I can't really say. I probably only heard the term maybe, when did it start becoming common parlance, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
But the phenomenon of the left completely having no interest in discussion about the thing that I thought was so important, which was Islam. And that started happening really early on. And that's what drove me to like these kind of jihad-concerned sites. And then I became very, very aware of that. So that's all part of the same thing.
Okay. But were you, what is your, generally speaking, what is the value that the left would provide in, perfectly balanced political system? Like, what is the purpose of the left? How far would you identify with certain of their?
Oh my God, man! Oh my God! It was a fucking putt. They were set up for like a 2-inch putt. It was so, all they had to do was kind of follow the basic ACLU program. The thing that led the ACLU to supporting the Nazis marching in Skokie, Illinois, which was a bedroom community just totally filled with Holocaust survivors. And the ACLU said, no, you know what, the Constitution, freedom of speech, it's really important, marketplace of ideas. And that's all the left had to do. All they had to do was say, look, I think you're really wrong about Islam, but I support, the discussion. Let's do this kind of rationally. That's all they had to do.
Oh, wait, and so why did they ignore Islam? Or what did you see from your perspective about especially the more radical currents and activities of Islam? Why did the left drop that ball?
Well, okay, so it's one thing to say that you support free speech and you're into kind of like a rational debate and all of that. But I think it's another thing altogether to say when you see the writing on the wall and you realize that if I indulge like the other side and allow that argument to happen, I'm going to lose it. And I think that the left saw the evidence was just so overwhelming. Anyone that really were to look closely is going to see we're going to lose this argument. There are, in fact, lots of things in the Quran that are unjustifiable and totally incompatible with like a safe, free, fun-loving kind of open Western environment world.
Okay.
There just are. And I know that there's a world of Middle East studies, academia, that tries to gloss over that, but they're full of shit. And they're playing this game. A lot of these Middle East studies departments are funded by Saudi Arabia, which is, by the way, in the United States, it's against the law, but that doesn't stop anybody. So anyways, I think that the left saw that. They were so reviled by the fact that if they were to really have this open discussion, they're going to have to make concessions that they're just not prepared to make. Steven Spielberg wouldn't make them. They're not going to make them either.
What concessions?
That there is something here's what it is. There's something very inherently dangerous in the Quran. There are lots of things.
Okay. And
it doesn't, and oh my God, I've got Muslim friends, at least I did until now. But that's another subject, how look, you've got this religion that threatens, in fact, mandates the murder of anybody that leaves it. My cult wasn't that bad, right? Our cult let people walk away, but Islam doesn't. If you're in a Muslim majority society, you can't mock Muhammad. Forget about publishing cartoons. You can't even question Muhammad openly, publicly, and you certainly can't leave him. So what is that?
Well, but why would the left not touch this or cover this up? What is it about the left on a game theory level that they're not touching or tackling?
Because there's so many Muslims that are trapped. They're trapped either because they don't know enough about Islam, they don't want to know. We're talking about or they have this struggle within themselves. They try to keep the worst mandates in the Quran at bay while they try to lead exemplary lives and are wonderful people. Okay, Islam directs Muslims to not be friends with Christians and Jews, and that's in the Quran. That's what Allah said. Don't be friends with Christians and Jews. Maybe Muhammad said it. Maybe they both said it. So You got any Muslim friends? And they consider you a Christian or a Jew. I'm Jewish by birth. They're transgressing like a direct direction from the Quran. So the left wasn't willing to look carefully enough and parse out these issues. So Robert Spencer, who I just want to give a shout out to because he's one of the greatest guys in the world. He's the creator and the main guy behind Jihad Watch. Robert Spencer is one of the most principled people I know, and yet you get the SPLC and all these other kind of leftist organizations that are denigrating him as some sort of like a violent extremist, terrorist, that kind of thing. All of that. And this is a common leftist thing because they refuse to actually have the discussion. They've dummied down on Islam, and they've dummied down on the constitutional beauty of being able to discuss it, and it's an issue that can't be discussed. That's it. Islam was the first issue where I saw the left was walking away from the table, right? That you've seen that meme, that joke about having a discussion with a leftist, but maybe someone will say anybody else that they think is like their enemy is like having a chess game with pigeon, and the pigeon just knocks over all the pieces instead of playing the game. So that's where I saw that first happening. That was Wokism. That was like this Marxist kind of drive. Nobody knew it that way, but that's what it was. It was like sailing with this wind. Nobody knew where it came from, but it's this Marxist wind that was driving their boat away from rational discourse and away from respecting others' rights to that.
Okay, so there's this clip of Ben Affleck and Sam Harris on Bill Maher's show, Politically Incorrect, if it was called that back then. Right. But Ben Affleck loses his crap on Sam Harris. Sam Harris is arguing against Islam, taking a very strong stance against Islam. And then Ben calls him maybe a racist or xenophobe. It starts like hurling all these insults.
He questions, who are you? Are you some sort of religious authority to be able to even opine on this? Sam Harris had a great line. He called Islam the mothership of bad ideas, of dangerous ideas. And that's what Affleck reacted to.
Okay. So in that instant was exemplifying a tact of destroying discussion or evading discussion or imploding discussion in order not to talk about this one sensitive issue, this one politically correct issue, which is really nuanced. You have the religion, you have the principles, and then you have billions of people. But under that umbrella, how do you start to talk about that and the problems within that? But we're just going to shove that off, and anybody who crosses this line is a bigot. Yep. Basically. So that is exemplifying a tactic that you saw the left adopted. But my question is, why would the left go there? What was the benefit of the left shutting down discussion on that particular issue?
Well, so I've already kind of offered one speculation as to why that might be, which is that they kind of saw the writing on the wall, and they saw that if they got into or countenance that discussion, that they wouldn't be able to win it. And what they don't want to ever concede is that some religion or some ideology that they're not really kind of they're not deeply committed to, but nonetheless it's out there, that some ideology, especially when associated with people that are not white European descended Americans, some ideology might be inferior to another one. Some religion might be inferior to another one. They didn't want to do that. That's like a very non-liberal, superficial liberal kind of position. So the liberal position is that it's a big happy world, and everything's the same. All cultures, all ideologies are the same. So if they didn't want to go there, and they didn't want to concede that there's something very dangerous in Islam that is not dangerous in the same way in modern Buddhism, or really I'd say modern Christianity too, any religion. They didn't want to do that. Another speculation might be this. They've already got this kind of thing happening where they know that they're going to be driving for more power. They know that it's just a matter of time before the U.S. Constitution is going to have to be seriously challenged and undermined. Why not now? This is as good an issue as any to try to shut down free speech on. But that's a real speculation on my part, and I don't know that anybody actually thought that.
Okay. But you saw that the treatment of what we're calling the left of your particular issue was wanting in the very least.
Yes.
Where in a world where wokeness didn't happen, where would you be on the political spectrum?
Right. That's a great question. I'd still be a liberal. I mean, Canada, legalized smoking dope. So that kind of, but still that's because the liberals did it. I'd be a liberal. Why not be a liberal? Liberals,
so kind of libertarian, kind of do what thou willst, as long as you're not impeding upon other people.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then any issue that affects the body politic should be submitted to rigorous debate.
Yes.
Okay. All right. But then woke did happen. So where has that sent you? Because you said over the last 3 years, something happened in the last 3 years that caused you to no longer be plugged into Islam or jihad, and now you are looking into this thing that we've called woke. Why?
Yeah, that's right.
How did that metastasize then in your imagination?
Sure. So, okay, so let's see what happens. I was really interested in the Hillary Clinton email thing, and I was following it very closely, and I'm following kind of the conservative websites are very anti-Clinton, and I'm looking for the rule of law to kind of make its mark. And I just think this is so inevitable because the evidence is there. This is back 5 years ago when I'm naive enough on today's standards, but at that point it was like the only reason kind of expectation, I think, to think that the evidence is going to make a real difference here. And the FBI and all these guys, they're gonna have to kind of call balls and strikes, somewhat kind of reasonably. So I'm really, really, really into that. And then that, therefore, made me very anti-Clinton. I should say, I cried when Obama was elected. I didn't want him to be
from
elected.
From despair or joy?
No, from joy. Okay. God, man, that's a horrible thing to say.
Well, I'm just want to clarify for the camera.
No. I shared the moment. This is so far out. Black president. Wow. Put that issue to rest, finally. No more race issues. Everything's great,
Okay. That's said with a wink and a nod for anybody who's just listening.
Right. But then, I discovered different things. I read Jack Cashel. There's another shout out. A great writer. Oh my God. He wrote the book that exposed Obama's dreams for my father is really being ghostwritten by Bill Ayers. The Weather Underground guy, the scion of the head, the CEO of some big oil company. It's always that way. Really rich kid. Bill Ayers heads up the Weatherman's Underground for years, comes out, he's Obama's friend, he ghostwrites dreams from my father. Bill Ayers is the guy that had his own autobiography about being on the lam and being in the Weather Underground and blowing up the Pentagon. Maybe you know this little tidbit. His autobiography came out on September 11th, 2001. So, or it's being reviewed in the New York Times on that day. So if you got the New York Times from that day, you'll see his autobiography where he's talking about blowing up the Pentagon but not doing enough damage, or exploding a bomb at the Pentagon. He ghostwrites dreams from my father. I totally get into it. I'm becoming more and more kind of skeptical about the media. The media's not doing this, only the conservative guys are. Jack Cashel, you'll love him. So anyways, time goes by, I'm getting further and further, and then the Clinton thing comes up, and I'm expecting big things to happen, and nothing does. I've become a Trump supporter. I've never seen The Apprentice a day in my life. Trump was nothing to me. I knew nothing about him. I really winced at some of the kind of unfair things that he said during that first campaign. I don't support, being like that at all, to cruise about his father and all that. But so what? Nobody's perfect in this game. I became a Trump supporter. Then what happens is I see how the left tried to frame him with stealing the election with Russia, which is total bullshit. Okay, so let me kind of collapse things and bring you somewhere kind of interesting.
Okay.
I don't know if you know of this book called The Cult of Trump. There was a book that came out, and it was a big bestseller.
Sounds like 80% of the op-eds that were written in the last 40 years.
But it was written by an authority. It was written by a guy that we used to praise when I was in my ex-cult phase. This is a guy named Steve Hassan, who he's like a big ex-cult guy. He's like a cult expert. And now suddenly he's turned his sights on me, right?
Well, you.
Fuck. Yes, because I'm a
specifically.
cult supporter. Because I'm a cult supporter, so I'm in a cult again.
Okay. But does he call you out by name or just...
He doesn't know who I am.
Okay.
So I track him down. And we have a debate, and it's on YouTube, and I'll send you the link. Or put it in our comment section or something. So he writes this book, The Cult of Trump, and it completely buys into all of the bullshit about how, Trump colluded with Russia and all of this stuff. And I'm just appalled. So I'm just another conservative guy now at this point that wants the institutions to be something of what they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I want the courts to be kind of what they were instead of being overwhelmed by Wokism. I've got to tell you what's happening here in British Columbia in a moment about that. It's really startling. And that's, in fact, how I ended up kind of coming to make contact with you. So anyways, Hassan writes this book. It's all bullshit. We have a debate. You can see for yourself if you ever watch it, kind of how he's just a sucker. Suddenly, like this guy that I thought was so smart is just he's not receptive to the evidence, doesn't want to have, and he's blaming us for being cult members. To me, the criteria is really simple. If you're not open to rational discussion, you've got to start watching and see whether or not are you infected with some sort of closed-minded kind of cultish thinking. That's all that it is. It doesn't matter what the ideology is. It doesn't matter how many people subscribe to it. It's just whether or not how much it cleaves you away from rationality. To me, that's the whole thing.
There's plenty of rationalization. That's where it gets so sticky. So it feels like rationality.
Yes. It's tricky life, but we've got our smarts. We can kind of, wade through these things, but
it takes a certain openness to disagreement, or a certain openness to disagreement or tension, and exploring the tensions and gaps of understanding. And when somebody is presented with a gap in their understanding, the way that they behave in that moment kind of will show you if they get really defensive, get really angry, or try to avoid it. That might mean that they have this rationalization that they're trying to protect, which is kind of similar to a cult, which is a group of people having a rationalization that they protect from.
And don't we all have that? We all have that. But what marks the left and the woke so much is that most of us still have at least a nominal but sincere kind of support and loyalty to the deeper fundamental values of free expression and rationality and all that. So if I think that you're stuck, we're having an argument about something, and I think that you're stuck on something, I can appeal to that. I can call that when I say, hold on. You are committed to first of all, staying at the table, and you're also committed to we've got to explore the facts here. We just have to, right? And that used to be something that everybody could depend on. You could expect that. So the left was routed on the whole Hillary Clinton, on the whole email. No. Right. No. I'm losing myself here. The left was routed on the Russiagate. Yeah, Russiagate. Totally. Okay. Yeah. And I expected, I'm so naive, I'm always behind the curve. I expected some sort of apology on the part of major media, right? Yeah. I expected it. I actually did. Instead, we have Matt Taibbi. We've got Glenn Greenwald, maybe Andrew Sullivan to some lesser extent. There are just few people in the media that said, wait a sec, that should have happened. Instead, what happened is the New York Times, what they did? They had their big staff session, and they said, look, Russiagate has petered out. We can't go any further. Mueller was a terrible witness. That's the end of that. So instead of, we're not going to admit anything. We're certainly not going to apologize to Trump. We'll pivot to race. And that was the birth of the 1619 Project.
No, yeah. I was thinking about them having a policy of no rear view mirror for themselves, but a rear view mirror for everybody else.
Yeah.
So they'll not look back on themselves. They'll deflect and show everybody else their rear view mirror. So that's an interesting tactic that they took.
They actually said that, though. They actually had a meeting where the head of their editorial department or whoever, maybe head of the paper, said, we are going to pivot to race. We need a new kind of gambit, a new strategy to go after Trump, and we're going to use race now. And that was really how they started the 1619 Project. Yeah. Let me tell you what's happening in our courts.
Which they awarded a Pulitzer Prize to because they believed in it so much.
Yeah. It was crazy. Like Steve Hassan, the cult expert, becoming so silly.
Well, just one moment about the Hassan discussion. Did you present him with, did you call him out on evidence? And how did that operate? How did he confront your confrontation about a gap in his understanding?
Non-responsively. Totally non-responsively. And you can see the debate. He wanted to have a mediator. He was scared to talk with me without one, so he found one of a very kind of lefty guy, very nice guy, and he mediated us. And as soon as Steve was on the ropes a little bit, the mediator came in and protected him and changed the subject a little bit.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry to distract you. I just wanted to put a note on that.
Let me tell you what's happening in our courts here in BC. So I'm saying all these institutions that they're eroding. The left is just it's an avalanche. It's a flood. Flood waters are rising, and they're just kind of threatening all of our institutions. The law is the ultimate one, and the law is the place, right? This is where the shit really happens.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what's happening in our courts here in BC. In mid-December, the provincial court, and then the next higher court, we have the BC Supreme Court, not to be confused with the Canadian Supreme Court, but we have the BC Supreme Court, then we have the Court of Appeal. So that's British Columbia. The three courts, the two lower courts, and then the other one had another directive that kind of complements it. They came down with directives saying that whenever a lawyer introduces themselves in court now, they have to give their gender pronouns.
Okay.
So they actually explained it. They said that this is premised on the understanding that it's false. It's a false assumption to think that you can know how to address someone or know what they are or who they are based on simply their voice or their appearance or their name. A total ideological assumption that I do not share, and yet they're just suddenly now the courts are saying that we have to do this. We have to do this kabuki theater where we say, thank you, Your Honor, for the record. My name is Heller, initial J, and my pronouns are he and him.
Yeah. So they're forcibly injecting doubt into a very basic human sense apparatus of sex. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Totally fucked up. I will never do it.
If you can wedge that, then you can. What else could you do that to? I mean, if we can't trust our eyes and our ears in a court of law when we're talking about the truth, then what do we trust? Just that little tiny thing can lead in that direction.
Absolutely. I imagine the next thing that's going to come down the pike is that they're going to be, there's this big anti-settler, anti-Canadian thing, and making us kind of doubt the very justification for our being here, which goes to our property rights. Do I really own this house? All of that. And so now what you have lawyers doing all the time, and the Law Society here in British Columbia, they're constantly genuflecting and virtue signaling and saying, I'm writing my letter, but underneath that, I don't just have the admonition that if this didn't go to the intended recipient, destroy it immediately. Instead, now the email also says, I'm writing you on the unceded territory of whatever multiple bands, really properly own this property.
So if they can destabilize property rights, who then does it all belong to? And are they just going to have an edict where everybody has to give the land to the surviving natives of the land? And how are they supposed to be able to control all this land and all the people that they're suddenly in charge of and that they own now because they own the property that the people are on, and people need property to be a person? So I just don't know where the end game is of that.
No one does. And as James Lindsay so artfully explains again and again, they don't know either. They don't have that end game. They're just pushing. They're in a system, in a structure that they're just breaking at. They're just punching at. They don't need to care about, is the ceiling going to fall on them, because they'll get out of the way, and they don't need to care about what's going to be built in its place. So those are great questions, but who knows?
So gender and property rights within British law, but is there a way for the law to, I want to say abdicate, but I don't think that's the correct word, to slow down or to reverse the culture that is being forced upon Canada by its elites? Can the laws forestall this?
So we would expect that's what the judges are all about, and all the way up to the Supreme Court. And this is another thing that I think that actually Lindsay was the first one that observed this, and he deserves credit for this. He says they might not even change the words, because that's too big a deal to do. So you've got the constitutional protections in the States. We have a softer constitution here in Canada with a big fat exception in it, that it's a charter, but if there's an exception that has to be implemented by the government and it's in the interests of society, go for it. So that's kind of not much of a charter protection. It's not as absolute as the American one. But in any event, they don't have to change anything. They just have to change how words are interpreted. And they can open up the door to all of that. So to answer your question, there is protection. The courts could protect us from that, but that's only as good as the courts. And we're getting so much woke justice here. And I have to say that the Canadian Supreme Court is pretty damn woke. And they're great, esteemed, totally respected legal scholars, and they're much smarter people than me. I'll grant them all that, but I can see woke. I can see when they come up with these myths that they now establish as like just myths in the realm of sexual assault. Okay, so on sex assault cases, it's now a myth that you can't quibble with any longer. It's been accepted. It's like dogma, doctrine that can't be looked behind. That if a woman consented to sex 500 days in a row, on the 501st day with the same person, it's totally irrelevant. You cannot bring in evidence of that prior consent because people have exploited it unfairly. Courts have jumped to the conclusion that she might have consented on the day in question. So we're going to just say kind of categorically that none of that prior consent matters at all, right?
And so that 501st non-consensual interaction is by definition rape. Yeah. And then carries all the legal ramifications of that.
Right. And that's right. And there are other things in the world of sex assault, as you can imagine, because of how strong Wokism has kind of turned its lights to that part of the law. But it's kind of wherever it will go. So I've been part of this group of people who've been very concerned about these gender directives, not just in their own right, as bad as they are, because they are terrible, and I'll never do it. I will never comply with that. Never. I don't know what will happen, but I just won't do it. But it's like that's just the first step. Like the people that got the ear of the courts and got this undue influence, this kind of gender rights lobbyists within the Canadian Bar Association, they've openly they've flaunted their power, and they've openly said that they've got, this is the beginning of their agenda. They want to get rid of, for example, in British Columbia, we call our Supreme Court judges my lord and my lady. And just to be clear, my lord is for men and my lady is for women.
Okay, just so we're clear about that. Okay.
Write that down? Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking notes right now.
So they want, that's the next thing. They want to go after that, right?
What would they say? My Majesty,
my ex, something
my
kind
eminence,
of gender neutral.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Get rid of sir, get rid of madam. Yeah. And you can make little kind of arguments. There's like an argument for all of that, but it's not enough of an argument to kind of counter the value of tradition, the value of convention, the value of kind of maintaining something that we've had for a while.
What is the value of that?
It's just that.
Why use a teletext machine when you have an iPhone, right? Why keep the teletext Telefax? Or?
Telex.
Yeah. Well, just for an example, you're a lawyer. You can argue your way.
Because the technology improved, and why would you want the shittier technology? What's better than saying "my lord" and "my lady"? It's got like there's a certain kind of, it's warm. It's like, it's got like what's the value of an antique? It's like something we're settled in with. That's a value in itself. And you have to go to Jordan Peterson to explain that. I don't know. But like, there's got to be deep, inherent, mythical, related values to the world we have around us. I think so. I'm just saying that sua sponte. I don't have any particular kind of, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't mean to pick on you. I don't like picking on my guests. But you said that the magistrates up in their lofty tower are putting forth this gender myth. Yes. But you're appealing to another myth yourself. You're appealing to this mythical, in your own words. So there's competing myths, and how do we reason our way through competing myths? Great question.
Okay, so when the judiciary came down with this directive without any consultation with the bench, I wrote them a letter, and I said, hey, that's a very kind of ideologically fueled directive you've come down with, and a lot of us disagree with it. Can we have the discussion that we were never, granted in the first place? Because that's a great question, Benjamin. That's a great question. I don't know. Maybe someone could persuade me, to kind of at least shift my opinion a little bit. But they don't want to have the discussion. Okay. That's the thing.
Okay.
So I think my lord and my lady are justifiable. I'm not ready to throw them out yet. You're having a garage sale and you go through the house with your wife, and she says, just kind of tyrannically, categorically, this is out and this is out. Wait a sec, can we talk about that?
Okay, so you just want consent of the governed in whatever mythology is being put. And it is very suspicious when... See, this is the problem. I do not want to get into the COVID thing, but it is precedent, and I'm not going to come down one way or the other, but the problem is that with the discourse of being able to even speak about it is such a fraught thing that the people who are trying to shove down all these non-discussed mandates on reinventing our culture and on mandating a lot of authoritarian things are somehow allied with this. It's unfortunate that they're allied, or they've maligned the COVID issue with a lot of people who are wary of the wokists are now becoming wary of the vaccine when they might not need to. But the fact that they can't even discuss it is a whole pattern of the behavior that destabilizes the entire playing field. And especially in a time of crisis, it heightens things and it makes things even more chaotic.
Absolutely. So much so. And I mean, that's completely true. And we've seen so much of the evidence has shifted, and kind of the best thinking on COVID has changed over time. Like I'm pretty persuaded at this point, not being a scientist or anything, but I'm pretty persuaded that it was a lab leak. This is just on COVID. I gotta say one thing. You probably did know, but this is like a big thing that a lot of people don't know. You know how the French collaborated with the Chinese to build the lab? Do you know about that? Okay, so the lab was a collaboration between the French and the Chinese, and the French brought the money, and they brought the know-how to build the lab, and they brought a lot of the initial scientific training to get the guys up to speed, right? Once they built it, the Chinese kicked them out. They kicked in 2015. The French are all over this. Why isn't the media? The lab went rogue in 2015. Now, why would they want to do that? Why would a Maoist totalitarian state have any interest in, that's got a biological lab, have any interest in kicking a Western power out and seeing what they're doing? Anyways, that's quite crazy. So things have changed a lot over COVID. Yeah. It really is too bad, and it's such bullshit to say that we got to safeguard against these dangerous kind of ideas that make people more skeptical. We should all be skeptical, but making the hard calls. Like I chose to get back very late in the game because I want to be able to travel. I'm kind of buckling under the pressure, the kind of social pressure. I admit that. But I still to this day think that I don't really know. Look, in 2 years' time, maybe sooner, but definitely within 2 years' time, there's going to be a big group of people saying to another big group of people, "I told you so." But I don't know who's going to agree on that.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I mean, again, that's a hard thing, and especially with the way that the algorithm's watching everything, to get too far into that particular particular topic. But yeah, please forgive me. Almighty algorithm, hallowed be thy code. So just to kind of pivot into hope, optimism, and if not hope, if not optimism, what can people do? What are you doing about the trouble that you see?
I'm trying to find a renewed interest and faith in reincarnation.
So you want to be reborn as a higher order being or lower order being?
Some Star Trek alternative kind of planet or something.
Okay.
Benjamin, I don't know, man. I don't know. Things don't bode well. All of our institutions are falling. The umpires are getting drunk. There's I don't know. I'm really into some of the just great opinion leaders in this realm. I've already mentioned Lindsay. Those guys are just brilliant. But there are others. Hey, can I just say how great I think what you're doing is? Do you mind? I don't mean to embarrass you, but I just kind of found you somehow. I think it was because you were interviewing someone that I cared about, and you're just really good, man. You're a good listener, a good talker. I think I've talked a lot in this discussion, but you've got good questions. You're a smart guy. It's good.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're paddling down the river.
You've done great stuff on transgender stuff. Just really, really good.
Yeah, it's a big topic. Yeah, I mean, my whole tactic is we'll talk about it, because what happened at Evergreen was that you weren't allowed to. So the only way to defeat it is the first step is to talk to people who want to talk.
I can't. This is where my imagination fails. I can't really imagine the mindset of the president at Evergreen. Just like I can't imagine the mindset of the cops that go to someone's house, that are able to kind of, I know they want to keep their jobs, but that they go to someone's house to kind of like in England, where they're like so hardcore. In Australia now over COVID, in England it's over kind of hate.
In Australia, England and hate speech.
Where the cops will go to someone's house and they'll act like, I would never imagine that a principled cop that was kind of raised in our Western society could stoop so low. And I couldn't imagine how the president of Evergreen, where are it's not just his courage. It's like, how does he look in the mirror when he couldn't stand up for Weinstein? And that's where my imagination fails. And that's where you're asking me for what I think optimistically. I don't know. I've given up on thinking that the media is going to have any kind of moment of accountability. Nothing will do it. I believe, oh man, I can't say this either because this goes on YouTube. All right, I believe that something happened in 2020, bigger than a bread box, that was fraudulent. And I do believe that. And the media is everything. The media is our public mind, and they'll never go there. And so, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what do you do to what do you do of interest when you're not thinking about the decaying of?
We jam on Saturday night. We used to have a band.
Okay. What's it called?
We were called the X-Flies.
Oh.
And we just played around town and stuff. And so we've got like a really cool setup in the basement. So we play music.
What's your instrument?
Guitar and sing.
Okay. Biggest influence on guitar?
Well, so I grew up as a Deadhead.
Okay.
Right. But then years to come, I was into like a lot of, I was into industrial music for a while. Never really punk. But alt stuff, Pixies kind of stuff. People compared us back then to Pixies a little bit.
So very, rather straightforward and hard.
And no, soft too. So, if things open up again, I'd like to be able to play somewhere. But the songs that I want to write, they're too ideological And, you know, I'd be getting the tomatoes that Rennie Davis got at Berkeley, you know. But anyways, we play a little music. That's it. Hang out. We're middle-aged, so we have e-bikes.
Well, is that like that's a battery bike?
Yeah.
Batteried bike? Okay.
Yeah,
So it's not like a motorbike.
No, have you not? Have you tried one? They're so great.
No. I have a. I'm kind of out in the woods. So
You're young.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Bikes are great. They really are. Just try one. Everybody's getting them.
Well, I have a nice bike that I actually have to use more, but there's nowhere to go right now.
Right.
Dreaming of a sports car for some reason. That's just in my head for some reason.
Yeah, get a Tesla.
I have no idea. I can't afford it. I'm a YouTuber, man.
Okay, I don't know what that
I'm a
means.
C-list YouTuber.
Well,
And a YouTuber can't get any...
Get a job. What? Get a job. No one will hire you. You're
okay, boomer. Congratulations for reaching the end of the discussion. If you enjoyed it, do be sure to leave a review or a comment or a thumbs up or whatever you need to do to show that glorious algorithm that this is some good stuff. And do be sure to go and check that back catalog, as it is brimming full of fantastic conversations. Links to provide monetary support are down there in the description as well. Have a good night.